Okay, so we're diving into AI in healthcare today. And it's pretty wild to think about, right? Like AI helping doctors, diagnose patients and treat them
Yeah.
using the latest research and stuff.
Yeah, the potential of large language models, LLMs, it's huge in healthcare. But there's a problem.
You're talking about accuracy, right? Like
Exactly.
these AI systems, sometimes they just make things up. We've all heard those stories. And in medicine, well, that's kind of a big deal.
It is. That's why this research paper on ENTAgents, it's really interesting. It's specifically for otolaryngology.
Ear, nose, and throat stuff.
Right. And it tries to solve this whole hallucination problem.
Okay, so we got a lot to cover. The research paper itself, and then all this extra material, guidelines, research, all the stuff that ENTAgents uses. We're going deep on how it works, what it's good at, what the limitations are, and, what it all means for, well, everyone.
Right.
So let's start with the problem. The research says that the top LLMs, they have a hallucination rate between 1.3 and 4.3%. That doesn't sound like much. But when you're talking about medicine,
Even a tiny error can have huge consequences. I mean,
yeah,
imagine a wrong dosage or a misdiagnosis because the AI made something up.
that's scary.
It is.
So that's where ENTAgents comes in.
Right.
The paper calls it an agentic framework.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds complicated.
Well, it combines two big things, retrieval-augmented generation, or RAG, and then this multi-agent system.
Okay, so RAG, what's that all about?
Think of it like a really powerful search engine for otolaryngology.
Okay.
They've taken tons of medical knowledge, like guidelines, textbooks, articles, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
and they've broken it down into chunks so the AI can search through it.
So it's not just, making stuff up. It's actually looking at real information.
Exactly. It can pull up the latest info when it answers a question.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. But what about this multi-agent system? What are these agents? What do they actually do?
Okay, so this is where it gets cool. The system processes information in a way that's kind of like, how we think. The paper talks about a 5-step process.
Steps, okay.
Drafter, reflection, search, reviser, and supervisor.
Okay. And what's that got to do with the whole self-critique thing?
Right. It's key to the whole thing. So imagine like specialists working on a case.
Okay,
The drafter, it creates an initial diagnosis.
got it.
Then reflection, that's like a senior consultant. It reviews the work and says, hey, maybe you missed something here.
So the AI is like checking its own work.
Yeah. And then the search agent comes in, like a librarian. It finds relevant info based on what reflection said.
Okay.
And then that info goes to the reviser. It updates the diagnosis using the feedback and the new research.
So it's like getting feedback and doing research to make its answer better.
Exactly.
And the supervisor, what's that one do?
It's overseeing everything, making
Oh.
sure the answer's good.
So it's all about accuracy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes it different from other LLMs, like those would just give an answer.
Right.
No thinking involved.
Right.
But how well does this actually work? They tested it.
No, I did. They used all kinds of question types like short answer, essay, even multiple choice.
Like a real otolaryngology exam.
It's a real exam.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. For the short answer questions, it got an accuracy rate of 81.3%.
That's better than some of the big names, right? Like ChatGPT.
It is slightly better than ChatGPT 4.0,
And
a lot better than just a regular language model.
Okay, so it's doing pretty well. What about essays?
For those, they focused on how comprehensive they were. There's an example in the paper. It's about tubotympanic.
I'm not even going to try that one.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's a type of ear infection.
Okay.
Chronic suppurative otitis media. Anyway, they show the whole 5-step process with this example. You can actually see how the AI comes up with the answer.
So it's like watching it learn in real time.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is cool because with some AI, you just get an answer and you don't know how it got there.
Right. Okay, so that's essays. You said they also did multiple choice?
Yeah. They used a bunch of questions from board vitals.
That's like for U.S. otolaryngology exams. Right?
Yeah, for the qualifying exams. And ENTAgents got a 75.5% accuracy rate.
Wow. And how does that compare to like actual humans taking the test?
It actually did better than the average human score by 4.5%.
Wow. So it's not just keeping up, it's like beating humans in some cases. But I'm guessing there are some limitations, right?
Yeah.
Even with these crazy good results. What are some of the things where it still needs work?
So one big thing is latency.
Latency.
It takes longer to get an answer
Hmm.
because it's going through this whole process of searching and revising.
Okay, so it's slower than just, asking ChatGPT something.
Right. And that's a problem for real-time clinical use.
Yeah, especially if you need an answer, like, right away.
Right.
What else?
Sometimes the agents don't follow the format for their answers perfectly,
Uh-huh.
and it's text only right now. I can't do images or audio.
So no x-rays or listening to patients describe their symptoms.
But yeah.
Okay. So a lot of room for improvement, but still some pretty amazing stuff. But let's think about our listener for a minute. What does this all mean for them? How could this actually change how we learn medicine, practice medicine, and receive care?
Okay, so imagine you're a med student, and you're drowning in information.
Been there.
ENTAgents, it could be like a personal tutor, pulling up info, explaining things, even quizzing you.
That would have been amazing back in med school.
Right.
And what about patients? Could they use this too?
Oh, yeah. Imagine getting clear explanations about, your condition or your treatment.
No more medical jargon.
Exactly. No more feeling overwhelmed by all the stuff online.
That's a huge deal.
It is.
It's like empowering patients.
Right?
And then there's the doctors themselves. How could this help them?
Well, it could help them with diagnosing rare conditions, for example, or double-checking diagnoses and keeping up with all the latest research.
Like having a whole team of specialists right there.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so we've talked about how it works, the testing, what it's good at, what it needs to work on, and how it could actually be used. But this is just the start of a bigger conversation, right?
Oh, yeah. There's so much more to explore.
Well, stay tuned, because in part 2, we're going to be looking at some specific examples. Like, there's this one case where the system actually corrected its own answer.
Right, and we'll talk more about the potential of ENTAgents and what it could mean for the future of otolaryngology and beyond. So welcome back. Before we go any further, I want to highlight this one example from the research. It really shows how ENTAgents can learn. It actually corrected its own answer.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Tell me more about this, like self-correcting AI.
So they gave ENTAgents a multiple choice question. It was about using ultrasound to diagnose thyroid nodules.
Okay.
And at first, it picked an answer that said there was a 15% chance of ultrasound finding cancerous nodules.
15%. That seems kind of low, doesn't it, for ultrasound?
Yeah, you're right to question that. It's actually more like 45%. And that's where ENTAgents is really cool. It flagged its own answer, like, hey, this might be wrong.
So it, like, knew it made a mistake.
Yeah, and it triggered its search agent to go look for better information.
So it recognized its own mistake and then went to find the right answer.
Exactly. The paper shows the whole process. The reflection agent questions the answer, then search digs up a more accurate number, and then revisor updates the response. They even use the archive agent to find evidence from research papers, about ultrasound and thyroid cancer.
Wait, so there are different types of agents for different tasks. It's like a whole medical team, but inside the AI.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Each one has its own role. Reflection's the critical thinker, search is the researcher, a revisor puts it all together, and then you've got these specialized agents like ArcSIF that, go deeper into specific stuff.
This really shows how ENTAgents is different from those other LLMs. A lot of them are trained on data that doesn't change,
Right.
which means their knowledge can be outdated pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
especially in medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Things change so fast.
But ENTAgents, with this whole RAG thing and the different agents, it's always got access to the latest research and guidelines. It's like constantly learning.
Exactly.
Like a medical textbook that updates itself.
Yeah, it's crucial.
So it sounds like ENTAgents did amazingly well overall, but was it equally good across all areas of otolaryngology?
Well, there were some differences, like it got its highest score analogy on those board vitals questions, 91.4% accuracy.
It's 91.4%. That's crazy good. Were there any areas where it, like, struggled?
The lowest score was in plastic and reconstructive surgery, but even then it still got 68.4%.
So even in its weakest area, it's still doing pretty well.
Right.
I mean, that's like the human specialist level. Okay, so we've talked about accuracy. We've talked about how it learns. What about explainability?
Oh, yeah, that's important.
The paper mentioned that as one of its strengths.
It's really important in medicine. Doctors need to know why the AI is suggesting something, not just take its word for it.
Right, it's about trust.
Exactly.
So how does ENTAgents do this? How does it make its reasoning clear?
So ENTAgents actually lets users see the whole process. They can see the initial answer, the critiques from the reflection agent, the searches it did, the evidence it found, and how it came up with the final answer.
So you can see its work, basically.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot more transparent and accountable.
Definitely.
So if it's this good, why is it just for otolaryngology?
That's a good question.
Could it work for other specialties too?
The researchers think so. They
Hmm.
say you could adapt this ENTAgents framework for all kinds of medical fields. The key would be creating those specialized knowledge bases.
Right, so it needs the right info.
Yeah, guidelines, research, clinical data, all that stuff.
Tailoring it for different areas of medicine.
Mm,
So you could have annotations for cardiology, oncology, neurology.
right.
The possibilities are kind of crazy.
It's exciting to think about.
This has been a wild ride so far. We've looked at how ENTAgents works, how it did on those exams, and even how it could be used in other areas.
It's pretty amazing.
But I feel like there's still so much more to talk about.
There is.
In part 3, we're going to step back a bit and think about the bigger picture. What does this all mean for the future of healthcare? Okay, so welcome back to the show. We spent the last 2 parts, really digging into ENTAgents, the accuracy, the self-correction, all that. But now I want to talk about, like, the big picture. What does this mean for healthcare going forward?
Well, it's a really interesting time to be talking about AI in medicine, right? We're seeing these tools like ENTAgents that could totally change how we diagnose and treat diseases and even how we think about health in general.
Yeah, it's exciting. But I think we need to be careful too, like, what role do we want AI to play in healthcare?
Right. And I think it's important to remember that AI, even really advanced AI, it's still a tool.
Uh-huh.
It's not meant to replace doctors. It's meant to help them, to support them so they can give the best possible care to their patients.
So it's more about, like, collaboration.
Exactly. Doctors and AI working together.
That makes sense. So how do we make sure that happens? Like, how do we integrate these systems into how doctors actually work?
Well, doctors need to understand what the AI can and can't do, its strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
It's not about just blindly following what the AI says.
It's got to be about using it to make better decisions.
Right? Exactly. Keeping that critical thinking, that human judgment, that's what makes a good doctor.
Okay, so we've talked about doctors. What about patients? Will this make healthcare more accessible for everyone? Or will it, create even bigger gaps between those who have access to the best care and those who don't?
Yeah, that's a big question. Making sure everyone can benefit from these advances, that's really important. If it's only available to certain groups, then yeah, it could make things worse.
So it's not enough to just develop the technology.
Right.
We've got to make sure it's used fairly.
Exactly. And that's a challenge that involves everyone. Policymakers, doctors, tech developers, and the communities themselves.
So we talked about how ENTAgents could help med students learn, and how it could give patients better information, and how it could help doctors in their practice. But what else is possible? Like, what's next? What's on the horizon?
Well, the possibilities are huge. I mean, imagine AI that can personalize treatments based on your genes and your medical history,
Wow,
or AI that can predict and prevent diseases before you even have symptoms.
this sounds like something out of a movie.
Oh,
But it's amazing to think about, right? Preventing diseases before they even happen.
it is. And AI could also help us with global health problems, bringing medical expertise to parts of the world where they don't have it.
Okay, so there's a lot of potential for good. But, we've seen how AI can be used in ways that aren't so good, like reinforcing biases and inequalities. How do we avoid that in healthcare?
You're right. We have to be careful. We need to make sure the data that trains these systems is diverse and represents everyone, and that the AI is designed to be fair and inclusive.
So it's about building trust.
Yeah, making sure these systems are used to create a healthcare system that's better for everyone, more equitable, more accessible.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. We started with a research paper about this one AI system, and now we're talking about, like, the future of healthcare.
It's a really exciting field, and it's changing so fast.
And it's important that we keep having these conversations
Mm.
about the potential benefits and the risks. So
Exactly.
to everyone listening, we encourage you to, keep learning about this stuff. Read the research, stay informed, and think critically about how you want AI to be part of your own healthcare.
Because in the end, the future of healthcare, it's something we're all creating together.
That's it for our deep dive into ENTAgents. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.